Hello, and welcome to the Thinking Elixir podcast, where we cover the news of the community and learn from each other. My name is Mark Erickson.
And I'm David Bernheisel.
Let's jump into the news. First up, Chris McCord releases a new project called FlyDeploy. We got a link to it over on GitHub. And what this is this does hot code upgrades for Elixir applications running on Fly.io without restarts or downtime. When I hear this, I'm thinking, okay, well, I know Fly uses Docker containers and Docker files to create the containers, but then they're actually transmuted into virtual machines. So it's not actually running in a container. And I wonder if that's part of the magic that makes this happen. But what FlyDeploy does is it enables zero downtime deployments by upgrading running Beam processes with new code while preserving their state. Unlike traditional deployments that restart the entire application, the hot upgrades suspends processes, swaps in new code, migrates the state via code change callbacks, then resumes processes for seamless code upgrades. You know, the Beam has that built in to do hot code upgrades. And I think he's doing some slightly different stuff here because in the GitHub project, towards the bottom, I noticed it had a when to use each. And it has a use FlyDeploy when you're deploying to containerized environments. Most of your changes are at the top level OTP application modules and processes that you completely own. So you're not changing versions of Elixir, you're not doing anything like that. And you're not adding new OTP applications. Maybe you're not adding new gen servers, right? I'm changing my UI. I'm adding a new feature that happens on this button click, things like that. Perfect example for those. And then he says, use OTP release handler when you're adding or removing applications at runtime, or you're requiring complex multi-step upgrade paths with specific module upgrade ordering. There's scenarios where this is a good fit for, and it's not like, oh, I can just now hot code upgrade anything. You kind of have to be aware of what your changes are and if this is a good candidate for it. But I don't know, David, have you had a chance to look at this at all?
I haven't, but I am very excited about the possibility of like rolling out hot code, to running things. Because one of the problems that I've experienced before is like if you have a bunch of gen server-y kind of things, going, if that area isn't affected by like a deploy, I still want to get some part of like the app out there to correct it, right? So if you have like 1,000 sessions running or something, or 1,000 connections running, I don't want to disrupt those connections. I don't want everybody to have that little loading bar in LiveView show up, right? Yeah. Because I'm running a deploy and everything's got to reconnect. I want those to persist. And, I guess you got to be careful about like how to do those hot code reloads when it does, affect those things. But sometimes you have a deploy that doesn't affect those things, and you just need to get like some repo query to be corrected, right? Mm-hmm. And this would just like let that run and be mostly invisible to, folks that have active connections, which is pretty exciting.
Oh yeah.
What this also means is like I have literally never done code change callbacks, because I've never done like the Erlang hot code reloads stuff.
Yeah. I
would have to like, I don't know, be a real Erlang Elixir developer here and learn me some Erlang, some of these niceties here that I've just never ever like dealt with before. Mm-hmm. Anyway, that's a good thing, and I'm down to learn it. I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And if I remember right, like the code change callbacks, like when you have a long running process like a gen server or a LiveView, it's a callback that says the upgrade process pauses the Beam and you get this code swapped out. And then you get this callback that fires that says, here's the state struct or state data that you had for this process. Do you need to modify it in any way based on this new code? So it gives you like an in-memory state migration ability. So yes, that takes extra planning. And you would only really want to do that when it matters. But the fact that you can do it is incredible.
Right. That's getting back to like the magic of what makes the Beam, the Beam. We get to actually use it. So I guess today this is about Fly in particular. So if you're a Fly user, This is great news for you. Otherwise, still got to go with the traditional, app up, hot code reload kind of, or, traditional Erlang release process, which if I recall correctly, mixed release doesn't support that stuff yet. So,
and really, I'm not entirely sure if this is restricted to Fly, because the previous work that Chris did on Flame, that was ported to other environments. He created it with Fly in mind, but he's like, there's nothing that restricts this to Fly. And under the when to use this, it's just deploying to containerized environments. It's not deploying to Fly. So there might be opportunities. There might be more legwork that has to be done on your side to make this work with your environment. But yeah, it might be really interesting to see how this goes beyond Fly.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by Paraxial.io, the only security platform with true Elixir support. I sat down with founder Michael Lubis to ask this week's security question. Are people too focused on the big, exotic, flashy attacks that are always ticking up news time and possibly missing the common, more basic vulnerabilities?
I would say that happens in the security industry, but in the developer community, software engineering, I would say that's not what happens. Developers are often very concerned about security. Rather, they don't really have the prioritization that they need to make an informed decision. So they'll get a security product that just spams them with a bunch of nonsense alerts, but doesn't correctly communicate, hey, there is something very basic that you need to be doing. It could be asset management, it could be patching, it could be using your ORM framework to prevent SQL injection. I know Ecto's not ORM, but that sort of spirit. So I think for developers, that's what they should be aware of, is really, are you prioritizing the threats that are most likely to cause a data breach or a ransomware incident for the work that you're doing?
Reach out to Michael at Paraxial.io to get personalized security feedback for your projects and your business. That's at Paraxial.io.
All right, next up, just a little update for some libraries out there. Elixir GRPC library has been updated to, as of time of recording, 0.11.4. What does it include? Well, it includes some pretty cool things. We got a little social media post that goes into it, a little bit more detail, but here's the TLDR, quoting some of their release notes. Beautiful and practical new documentation now with interactive live books to learn and play with gRPC in real time. If you've ever wanted to, this is me now. If you've ever wanted to play with gRPC in real time, now you can. I feel like as if it's a toy. A couple more things is plus new streaming features. So effects for side effect orchestration, and then also a new function. I think it's a new function. Map error for smarter error handling. These are all conveniences to just be able to use gRPC with less tedious work around it, all good stuff. And anything to do with better and newer documentation is always a win. I know that doesn't always necessitate a point release, but maybe I'm in the camp. If you rework the docs and the library is the same, dude, that is a major feature. Bump that to 2.0. I'm mostly kidding, but like that's how important that is. So I'm very happy that they're getting some better documentation. gRPC is pretty hard to wrap your head around, all together. So the more documentation around gRPC, the better.
Nice. And next up, ErrorTracker gets an update to version 0.7.0. So ErrorTracker it's kind of like one of those go-to libraries that I add to any project that I intend to actually deploy and manage myself. So this is an embedded LiveView error tracker, so I can create my own little admin route to it so I can see the errors that are coming up in real time and they're persisted, so I can see what's happening. I can mark them as cleared and this is handled, clean things up. It's just a great little tool to have. I want to have error tracking. I want to know what's going on with my application, but I'm not going to take this particular project and hook it up to a paid service just to have that. That's the perfect place for this to fit. So their new version, what does this do? This adds a mix ErrorTracker.install, which is an Igniter installer. So it makes it easier to get started with. And it adds LiveView 1.0 support. And it also improves the support for MariaDB. Postgres is our default database on most Elixir apps. But because ErrorTracker persists some of these errors in the database, they made some effort to say, we can make sure this works better on Maria, and that's awesome. And then there's also some security updates to redact some sensitive request headers. So that's nice, just keeping things a little cleaner for those errors that do get persisted. So yeah, you do have a responsibility to make sure that this is safely behind something that's protected, admin only kind of access. But yeah, I'd love to see the update there.
All right, yeah, moving on. So an interesting new CLI project called Xterm AI. Screenshot looks really impressive here, so you're gonna have to check this out. Cover your ears if you don't love AI. All right, this is all about AI. We got a link to the GitHub project here. Here's a quote of them explaining themselves. It's an advanced web-based terminal emulator with built-in AI assistance powered by OpenRouter. This project combines a real terminal in the browser with intelligent AI capabilities, allowing the users to get help, analyze outputs, receive command suggestions. You really got to look at the screenshot here, but if I can just try to describe it for you, many of our listeners may know about Tidewave Web at this point. So if you can think about Tidewave Web, it's a web-based application with on the left side, a chat history. You chat with your LLM of choice, and then the right side is an iframe, I guess, of your web application, your Phoenix application, or your Rails application, or Flask at this point, right? That chat and Tidewave has access to that browser. It can take screenshots. It's all web-based, right? So it's much more intuitive, and it can debug things and actually have access to the browser information there instead of just like server logs, for example, which it also does have access to. So that's Tidewave Web. Xterm AI here. I'm going to write this in my notebook. Another Elixir library with EX in front of it. The shame list. All right, Xterm AI here is basically Tidewave Web, but instead of your web application, it's your terminal. Mm-hmm. You still have your AI assistant there, but it's your terminal. And so there's several solutions like this out in the world, but not quite like this that I've seen. The biggest thing that comes to mind is Warp. Warp is a terminal that has a bunch of AI capabilities in there. I forget what it's written in, but if you're looking for a fast rendering one, Warp is not it. But Warp has a bunch of extra conveniences and niceties in there that makes it really compelling, honestly. But one of the key features of it is that it has AI built in. So you have a terminal prompt or you can kind of like chat with your terminal and have it do things for you. It's pretty nice. I don't use it for what it's worth, but it gives me the heebie-jeebies to have AI that close to RMRF root, but anyway, so that's what Xterm AI is doing here. It's putting your terminal into a web interface, giving you access to AI agents and maybe just a cleaner interface for doing stuff. The open router part of this means that you can kind of bring your own keys to any external service in there and swap it out fairly quickly and or balance services if you have multiple things. All right, well, that's Xterm AI in a nutshell. If any of that sounds interesting to you, it's at least worth looking at and investigating, but it looks pretty darn cool.
But the cool thing is it's Elixir.
Yeah, it's written in Elixir. Yeah.
All right. And next up, the Horde project has had a big update. So Horde, if you haven't heard that term, that library, it is a distributed supervisor and registry backed by Delta CRDTs. So that's a lot of OTP jargon. Really what it is, if you're using registry, it's built in, part of the Elixir runtime. That is a process registry. So you can say, I want to be able to find this particular named service this way, and it goes through this registry. So it's very convenient for doing that. But that is single host. It is on this node in a cluster and works great for that. But Horde is saying, we want to take on the whole distributed aspect. So Horde is not a new project. This has been around for some time. I'd looked at it years ago. I know people have had it in production for at least 5 years. It is a mature project. And so what they're doing now is that they have a new GitHub organization of Elixir-Horde. So it's been moved to this new organization. The GitHub org is described as, this space brings together projects focused on distributed systems, fault-tolerant supervision, and global process registration in the Elixir ecosystem. So they're wanting it to be a home for things that are very much related to distributed processes and distributed computing and being able to work with processes across a whole cluster. I'm really excited to see what happens with that. Other libraries might have found a home, a place to relocate themselves there too. So we wanted to just put that on everyone's radar and also just remind people that Horde exists and it's still going strong. But on a personal note, it's been a few years since I've actually played with Horde. I really need to dig into it again. This is my probably out-of-date understanding, okay? When I was at Fly.io, I wanted to use Horde because with Fly, I could easily have my Phoenix application be clustered across regions, right? So I've got one region in Chicago and one over in a data center in France. And I want Horde to be able to connect everything. And that worked great, except sometimes it would create a new process not where I wanted it. It would put it over in France when it should be here where the user is and they're connected in Chicago. So I didn't have a way to partition that I could easily see to say, this is where I want this process to live by default. I want it to be located, geolocated, where it's going to be physically close. I had only gone far enough to see, this is a problem I'm having. I would love to find out if there's a way to solve that, because I love the idea of being able to use that with Fly and have a clustered application that's across multiple data centers and have the Horde processes and the supervised things have a global registry, right? To be able to find that process, but also be able to declare or control where it should show up, because this one is for this user and this user is connected in this data center. So go there. I really should recheck it out again, but it could entirely be that they have a way to handle that and I just didn't see it at the time, or it's come since then. Anyway, I think Horde is an awesome library and I'm just happy to see that they're going strong and there's still more stuff happening.
All right, quick little PSA for Zed editor users. I guess really this is kind of anybody, really. Anyone that's actually using Expert LSP, this is probably a PSA for you. Just a reminder, Expert LSP is the official combined effort of language servers support for the Elixir ecosystem, and they don't currently have versions. Everything is nightly right now. And so because of that, in particular for Zed, a lot of these editors might try to auto-update LSPs, right? But being that Expert is always the version of nightly, that will never get updated for Zed. So that means that you have to update it. So just heads up about that. Hat tip to Jason Siebes for putting out the PSA on socials. And that reminded me of a little script I actually made as well to update Expert really quickly. So we'll leave a link to that little script in case you're interested. But the idea is that, yeah, it's a little bash script that downloads the latest nightly, puts it into a predictable location for you, and then presumably you would configure your editor to point to that binary instead of whatever it has built in. Yeah, and that's the way that you can keep Expert updated, but it is a manual process, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to remember to do that. And still looking forward to those real pointed releases for Expert. I haven't tried it out lately. I'm still on Lexical. I can't remember the problems I was having with Expert, but Lexical has been more stable for me among the choices out there. So maybe today I'll give it a try again and see how it's going.
And next up, I saw that SmartLogic published a case study about how they are using Elixir to help researchers. They partnered up with a ICRT group, which is Indoor Climate Research and Training. I just thought it was cool. They were sharing what they did. Honestly, I would love to see more Elixir companies doing this. Just the idea of little case studies about this is how we're using Elixir to solve interesting problems that actually affect people. It would give more visibility to people using Elixir to do this. Well, in this case, what is it they've done? They built a platform that better serves the community by sending real-time alerts to residents and collecting sensor data for researchers. They partnered together with this research group, and they created a data platform that connects home air quality sensors, like IoT little devices, to both residents and researchers. And home evaluation specialists install these monitors that detect changes in common indoor pollutants. Normally, if you have like a carbon monoxide alert, those are kind of required for most homes. You'll just get the alert. It doesn't actually tell you what to do. So the idea is with this, it's also telling you what to do. Like it's crossed some threshold, you should activate an exhaust fan or open a window or something like that. With this, they shared what they're using. So they're using Elixir, Prometheus, Grafana, Postgres, Twilio, and Mailgun for scalable data ingesting, visualizing, and real-time alerts. And they designed dashboards to meet the needs of both residents and the home health evaluators and the researchers. I just thought it was cool to see a case study showing this is how we're using Elixir to help people.
All right. Next up, just wanted to call out a couple of Elixir articles that were published this past couple of weeks. So first one is from johnelmlabs.com. We've got links to all these in the show notes, of course, but this article is about the top 3 LiveView form mistakes. Now, I don't know if it's top 3 of what he's observed or across the community. If there was a poll, I'm not sure where are you getting your info, man? But still a good couple of mistakes I've come across as well. So just a TLDR here is that mistake number 1 is slow, laggy forms with scattered logic. Yep, I've experienced that. Mistake number 2 is brittle system where UI and database can't involve independently. Gosh, I think that's probably mistake number 1. And then mistake number 3 is users are stuck with valid data but can't submit. And this is where you have probably like stitched together or incorrectly, messed with ecto change sets or maps or something, right? I want to say back in my Ruby days, there was a term here. It's like a hash obsession instead of objects or something like that. And so I think that same principle kind of carries over to a bunch of these form-based like UIs, where in our case it would be a map obsession instead of a struct obsession. Mm-hmm. And so we get into this trap of like putting stuff into maps, which have implied types and no casting or manual casting or something along those lines. And there's nothing to really help you keep a proper structure, which is the point of a struct. That is what ecto change sets help you achieve. It gives you a proper structure. It gives you proper ways of casting, changing, yada, yada. So that's why I always try to use ecto change sets, embedded ecto change sets in my UIs. That said, ecto change sets are meant to be stateless, not exactly stateful. They don't have caches or anything like that. So when you're using it with LiveView, things are a little bit different. You kind of have to resubmit the whole thing all the time to get a proper validation going. So we have these map obsessions where we try to make it work instead of properly, storing the right things here. Anyway, so that's that article. And then 2 more. I won't go into these articles, but if you're looking for any ammo to convince coworkers or something like that about why Elixir and Erlang or Phoenix are good choices, we got a couple of links to borogonal.com, I'm guessing how to pronounce that, and then yellowduck.be. These are 2 posts about falling in love with Erlang and why I chose Phoenix LiveView over Rails, Laravel, and Next.js. So if you're curious about the perspectives, you should go check out these 2 articles. They're not that long. Good little pickups and good little reasons too about why you're a listener. You know why you love it. And this is a little bit of validation and a different perspective of why other people love it.
All right. And last up for the news, this is stepping back from Elixir specific. Now we're going to talk about GitHub's 2025 Octoverse report. So this is GitHub doing a whole State of the Union kind of what have we seen with GitHub over the past year and looking back beyond that, and then what can we project forward. So it's a really interesting report. But hang around, because after this, we're going to have a discussion where I'm going to share how I use coding agents to do my day-to-day Elixir programming. I've seen people talking about this online too. It's like, oh yeah, I'm doing that too. But I don't think that many people are doing it this way exactly. It's not like this is a big secret or anything, but like this has been successful for me. So I'm going to share that. So before we get into that, we're going to finish up with this Octoverse report. I'm just going to share some of the intro of the report. It's quite lengthy. We've got a link to the full thing. They give away a lot of it in the top part of the report. So we're going to cover some of that. What they say is if 2025 had a theme, it would be growth. Every second, more than 1 new developer on average joined GitHub. Over 36 million in the past year. It's our fastest absolute growth rate yet, and 180 million plus developers now work and build on GitHub. They're seeing an incredible amount of growth of the number of users.
Yeah, just a little context to what the purpose of this Octoverse report is it's kind of like a company report. Mm-hmm. So these are going to be why and how great a GitHub is and how awesome its products are. So just keep that in mind as we're going through this, not to negate all of its progress and wonderful things, but they make some other good points in here that we're going to explore.
Yeah, so they are obviously pitching GitHub Copilot as one of what they believe is a successful thing. We can skip over that part, but they say that the surge in activity coincides with a structural milestone. For the first time, TypeScript overtook both Python and JavaScript as the most used language on GitHub. That's interesting that not just JavaScript, but TypeScript specifically overtook Python. They continue saying this marks the most significant language shift in more than a decade. So that's just one of those milestones that we see in the developer community, GitHub is a really good place to have insight into all of this. Yes, there are other places like GitLab, self-hosted. There's lots of other places where people keep their code. Just we do tend to
Centralize,
yes, in GitHub, for better or worse. Yes.
So it's over a decade. I wonder if, the last 10 years, like Python's just a generally good scripting language anyway, as an introductory language. It's very, very popular. But in the last couple of years, I think a lot of Python development has happened because of like LLM development in general.
Yep.
And I'm curious if this shift over to TypeScript, ignoring the whole web, is dominant anyway. So of course, TypeScript and JavaScript are going to be up there. But I wonder if it's shifted over to TypeScript because it's now the weight is moving into using the LLM stuff as well.
I think if you were to start a new Next.js project, it's probably going to default go into TypeScript. That a lot of these frameworks and things are just going to code generate, give you a boilerplate start, and it's probably going to be TypeScript by default. So I think that's part of it. But then yes, because of the compiler helps that you get with a typed language, tooling is better. It can be more helpful. And LLMs being part of that, especially when you're having those iterations where it's testing and compiling and modifying code.
Right.
And then they also go into where they are seeing the growth, like where in the world. And they see that India alone added more than 5 million developers just this year. And over 14% of all the new accounts was India. That's interesting. And they're on track to account for 1 in every 3 new developers on GitHub by 2030, if that trend were to continue. They give 3 highlights we just wanted to dig into a little bit. 1, generative AI is now standard in development. More than 1.1 million public repositories now use LLM SDK, with almost 700,000 of these projects created in just the past 12 months alone. And that's like 178% year over year. And developers are also merged a record number, 518 million pull requests. They continue. Moreover, AI adoption starts quickly. 80% of new developers on GitHub use Copilot in their first week. Now, I don't use Copilot. I haven't tried it in a long time. I'm sure it's gotten better. But it's one of those things where if you're a truly new developer, you're probably just going to default with whatever's offered by the platform until you realize there might be something different or better. But that's where you're going to start. And so like that really is showing these are new developers.
Yeah.
The second point was the one we already mentioned, that TypeScript is now the most used language on GitHub. And they do call out that nearly every major front-end framework now scaffolds with TypeScript by default. Yeah, so that's where a lot of that's coming from. It's just, I pick up this framework and that's how it starts. So that's how I continue. So even still, Python remains dominant for AI and data science workloads, while the JavaScript TypeScript ecosystem still accounts for more overall activity than Python alone. And the last big highlights they make is AI is reshaping choices, not just code, saying in the past, developer choice meant picking an IDE, a language, or framework. In 2025, that's changing. We see correlations between the rapid adoption of AI tools and evolving language preferences. This and other shifts suggest AI is influencing not only how fast code is written, but which languages and tools developers are using. The last little thing they say in their summary is the biggest thing they saw in 2025 is that agents are here. Early signals in our data are starting to show their impact, but ultimately point to one key thing: we're just getting started, and we expect far greater activity in the months and years ahead. We've got a link to the full report where they break it down. They have a video version of some of it. They've got charts and call outs to help visualize what they're talking about. But it is just interesting. Like, we are seeing a shift in the industry that just has happened for a number of different reasons, like the JavaScript frameworks making a choice, but also the increase of people starting a developer account. Maybe they're not going to be professional developers. Maybe they're just playing. I don't know. It's kind of early to say. But just that it's growing in terms of who is saying, yeah, I want to have a GitHub account and start playing with creating code. That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, just anecdotally, like over the weekend, I was telling Mark about this before the show, but over the weekend, I scaffolded a Flutter project.
Nice. Yes.
I don't know native development, like Android or iOS development. And I know that Flutter makes some promises and it's supposed to be pretty well cross-platform, but who loves Dart? I think that's a small.
Oh, I hate Dart.
You know,
yeah.
But alas, that's what Flutter is written in. And I guess I don't care what it is as long as it does the thing. This is not something I'm pouring my soul into. I just need to accomplish a task and move on just for me, right?
Yeah.
So I scaffolded a Flutter project and I pointed to a Windows-only program that did a thing that I wanted it to do, but on my phone. I've got an Android and an iOS here, an Android device. And so I had this Flutter project scaffolded by the real Flutter CLI thing to get it started, right? And then I had Claude Web, because I got some free credits, Claude Web to use that repo. And I instructed it to just like, it's pretty much like auto accept edits on all the time in the web client for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Which I don't normally like to do, but in this case, I didn't care. This was legit an experiment. And so the experiment was, how far can this go and will it work? I gave it a reference GitHub project. I said, hey, take this GitHub project over here. It does a thing. It does this thing. Now I want it to work on an Android project. And I want the UI to look like this, and that, and let it go. And it worked within about 3 fixes. So it got all the way there.
Yeah.
And then I launched it on the phone with the Flutter dev tools there, which by the way is very easy, very cool. And yeah, it launched and it worked. And then there was a couple of like little nagging points about how Android does storage access and stuff. I was doing things with files. So I just had to adjust a couple things here and there to make it work. And it freaking worked. I was so amazed by that. So just given that little anecdote of how AI has changed things, AI's here, whether we like it or not. You know, I'm not going to beat that drum that you have to change your practices and you have to change the way that you work, but there are useful things that it can do in certain scenarios where you just simply don't have the time or you don't want this to be like a passion project. This is just a thing you need to accomplish, right? So you can move on to have your attention put on to something else that's a little bit more important, right? So like, it's really just like a delegation for me at this point. It's like, I don't care about this thing right here as much. Oftentimes I'll then realize, oh, you know what? I actually do care a lot. So you got trade-offs, I guess. Anyway, I can agree with the Octoverse report here about that agents are here, that AI is reshaping our development workflow, you know, our development culture for sure. It's going to change things.
Yep. Well, that's it for the news. Now we're going to transition a little bit. And I just wanted to share how I have been having success using AI coding agents for my day-to-day work. I mean, you can go online and see everyone saying, this is how I do it, and this is mind-blowing, and blah, 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 blah. I hate all that stuff, right? It's just noise. So this is just like my experience. I've been trying to share this with my team, just saying, hey, this is what really works well for me, and this might work well for you. So one key thing is this is not vibe coding, right? I'm using an AI coding agent, but it is not vibe coding. Vibe coding, I've done that too. Like, hey, I want to build a website and I don't care what it's written in. I just chose this language called Hugo, which happens to be Go based and it has its own templating language. Make this website work. I don't care. That's vibe coding. Perfect. And like your Android example, right? Like that's vibe coding. It's like, hey, this is unlocking something else for me that's important to me. It's just an unlock. So I'm not invested. What I'm talking about is not the vibe coding. This is, I am actually pairing with an agent. And the role that I really consider myself taking is I am the software architect. I am deciding what gets done, how it gets done, what it looks like, not just like the UI, but like the APIs and everything. I'm fully invested as to designing this solution. But it's like, if you imagine a software architect in the olden days, back when we had software architects in companies, we still do. But, you know, they might say, here's the design and give it to a team who implements it. My team who implements it happens to be an agent. That's the approach that I'm taking and the mindset I'm coming at it with. So first, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the editors that I've used and what's worked for me. So I initially was using Cursor, the IDE, which is totally based on Visual Studio Code. And they took that, customized it, and added some built-in cursor to it. Overall, I liked it. It really had deep editor integration, which meant I'd make a code change and the AI would see, oh, this is the change you made. And I can have a little tab mark down here to see if you want to make that same change on this other line or a very similar change. And I could just say tab, 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 and it would make these changes. And these aren't just like the kind of changes where you'd say, I want to do a multi-select and have multiple cursors and just type all of the same lines. No, this is actually finessed and applying it to that particular example and that line where it's different, but it's getting it right. So like that was really handy. I really liked that. The con I had with Cursor is it kind of stomped all over my LSP. Like I would be using my editor and I'd say, module dot, and I want to see the function names that come up. And it's like throwing itself in the mix. It's like, no, I want to see the LSP. And it would make that stuff hard. So it was never a perfect fit. I was using it at work that way, and I'm like, well, I'm just going to sign up for my own pro account at home, do all this with my personal projects too. And then I learned how quickly that doesn't work well for me because the pro version is like $200 if you pay for a year, but it gives you like $20 worth of credits per month. And using my workflow, that would last me like 3 days. It's like, that's no good. That is not what I call pro. So anyway, I ended up switching to Claude Code. Now, if you have tried Claude Code, there's two real different ways you can use it. So I do prefer Visual Studio Code. That's just the editor I like to use. Dave, what's your favorite one?
NeoVim with Claude Code, but Zed if I'm feeling a GUI today.
Nice. Yeah, great. Yeah, so everyone has like their different preferences there. What's cool, though, is that Anthropic creates a Claude Code Visual Studio extension. So it actually adds it into the IDE. So I have a button and it opens a tab and I'm able to interact with the coding agent in there where it's not the terminal. And that means things like, when I want to have a multi-line input, I can shift enter as opposed to having to remember to do a /enter to have it carry over to the next line. Things like that. So it's like in the editor versus in a terminal, but you can use it both ways, right? And the other benefit for the extension is it talks to, like, you can have Claude Code in your terminal and it hooks up to the editor and it will know what file you're looking at. And I can even have a selection. I can say, select a few lines and it will know what lines are selected. So then I can have a really vague kind of prompt where I can say, what does this do here? And it knows what file and what's selected. So it has the context to be able to do something and give helpful insights. That's really cool. I like having the Visual Studio Code with the extension with Claude where I can run inside or outside. That's the editor. Right now I'm using Claude Code. Now I wanted to talk about my AI development flow. Just share this and see, hey, this might be helpful for you. So when I start with my flow, I'm starting with a PRD, which is a product requirements document. So this is where the product manager has said, this is the new feature we need. These are the requirements. This is, what makes acceptable criteria, all that kind of stuff. But usually then I'll have like a Zoom chat or something, a meeting with the product manager. And he's showing me in the UI, this is how we do this. This is where it gets set up. This is where I want to see this. And he's explaining it all. And he's explaining the background. And this is why this is important. This is why the users care. This is, all the context. So I record that. I'm remote. So this is all web-based. And I'm using like OBS Studio just to record my desktop. For those features where it's a bigger deal to me, like this is a big chunk of work and this has a lot of context to it, then I'll take this extra step where I'll take that recording and I'll use AI to transcribe it. So I get a transcription of our meeting, and then I will take the original PRD and this transcription, and then I will have AI create a new expanded and enriched PRD that has all the details that I'm supposed to know and need to know. And it's all nicely summarized and organized, right? So like that's my document that I'm working from. It's great, especially when I have like a long weekend and I'm going to be picking back up the next week. I can just have oh yeah, this is what they said during the meeting about why the user cares about this. Very helpful. If it's a feature I understand, I'm not going to go through the whole process of transcribing and doing all that. So then what I do is I now have this enriched PRD. So then I go to my coding agent and I say, here's what we're working on. This is all just in a markdown file that I've created in the project where it's not checked in, where it just has access to the document and the project. And I say, do all of the research in the project to figure out what we need to do to implement this. and I might give it some clues about how I want it to do it. Or maybe I've already thought through this enough that I know the type of solution I want to use. So I might give it that ahead of time. But then I'm telling it to create a new markdown file that is an implementation plan. And then it will do all this research, read all this code. And that's super helpful because it's finding all the places that are linked and related to this code that I may not be thinking about. So it's just helping to do all the research on what does this impact? And it creates a plan. So now I have a markdown plan. And now I will review that markdown plan as the software architect. And I'll say, oh, don't do this, change this. And some of those will be edits that I'm making manually to the plan. Or I'm going to see, oh, this is using gen servers and it's doing PIDs, but I want to use names and use via tuples with the registry. And I want the API to look like this. Right? So I'm designing all of that, and I will tell the agent to update the plan with this new design or approach, and then it will edit the plan. So what I'm doing is I'm working with the agent to iterate and improve the plan. Why this is important, as opposed to just saying I'm using Claude Code in plan mode or Cursor in plan mode, is because this document persists. And the other reason why this is better, rather than just saying, take this whole PRD and go and just do all the code changes, is because it's going to do something that I don't like. Then I'm kind of vibe coding it, right? It's like, whatever happens. You're like, no, I don't want that. And the problem with that is I end up kind of with a mess. The mess that I have is it's harder to clean up because it's spread across many files. While if I'm doing all those edits and iterations on this plan, this single markdown file, that is really easy for the AI agent to read the entire plan and make edits and comprehend it rather than having to navigate a whole project. So I'm iterating in this single document. And then once I get to that point where, yes, I like this plan, then I can tell the agent what I do is I'll start a new context, right? So I'm starting with a clean context and implement this plan. It goes, and I'll just maybe have to approve some actions that it's going to take at different times, but I just let it go. And writing tests should be part of that plan. If it's not part of the plan, I make sure that, okay, let's write tests to cover what was just added to the project. And it's really important that you have tests because the AI agents can run the tests and iterate on the code solution and iterate on fixing the tests. It gets the feedback loop to see this is actually working or it's not. And it's important that you actually review the tests, right? That you follow what it's doing. Because I've seen plenty of cases, I'm sure you've seen this too, David. One of them, I had a gen server and it would shut itself down if it was left inactive for a certain period of time, like a configured amount of time. And the AI agent, the code for this test was, I'm going to start the gen server in a task, and the task has a very short duration. The task was killing the gen server instead of the gen server shutting down, but it was passing. The reason I point that out is not to say, oh, AI agents suck at writing tests and they totally fail and it's useless. It's like, no, It's just that it needs oversight.
Yeah.
Then I can see that I tell it to either fix the test or I just fix that test myself. Sometimes they'll create tests that there's too much overlap with an existing test. So I'll just delete tests. Like I don't need this one and this one and this one because this one covers everything. So, you just clean it up, right? But that's really minimal in terms of how much edits I'm having to do. So the end result with all of this, when I've got my AI generated implementation following the plan that I designed with the tests that validate the performance, and I've reviewed the test that, yes, this is actually doing what we want. The whole result is I have a major new feature designed, reviewed, and implemented, and that whole process might take me 2 days. If it's a big one where I really have to review it and think about it and iterate on it. But that's like 2 days from here, do this chunk of work to me saying, here's a PR ready for review. And honestly, having done this enough years, I know that that amount of work on this particular project probably would have taken me about 2 weeks or longer to do it myself. And the reason is, if I'm picking something up day after day after day, I have to reload all that context into my brain and I'm going to forget stuff. And if I'm doing it in a shorter time frame, it's already all in my brain. So I'm able to work faster with the design of it. And that's just a better experience for me. It's like, it's not as frustrating, like, oh yeah, I got to remember all this. And it's too many pieces to keep track of because I have one document. One of the things I just want to call out though, as I've seen a lot of people struggle with having a bad experience where the AI is running out of context. So it does compaction and it does its own summary. And with that, you lose all of the plan and document and all of the decisions that you've made. what's handy about having this implementation plan and the original PRD document is you can easily start a new context and say, hey, I have this bug. Go update the plan with if we had to make a decision, like we have to do something different. So fix the code and update the plan. So I always have a persistent plan that I can iterate from and make fixes from. And we're about out of time, but there was a resource I wanted to put on people's radar. It's a really good podcast episode from the folks over at Y Combinator about why enterprises are bad at AI. And they explain how it works within companies, how large companies partner with consultancies. And like, we always partner with them to help implement our stuff, and why they're struggling. And because there's like an MIT report that quoted 95% of companies' AI initiatives fail. And people are saying, that's proof that it's all a lie, it's all hype. It's like, well, no, this is what's happening. And this is an incredible opportunity for startups, because startups are able to do this. They are able to think differently. They're able to adopt this. And then what's happening is these big companies, their partners spend like $10 million and a year or 18 months trying to implement something, and it doesn't work. Then they come back to the startup and say, yeah, can you help us do this? And then they get it up and running in production. So I just wanted to share, this is what's been successful for me. I hope it can be successful or give you ideas on how this might be helpful for you. But I think this really is an opportunity for me to be in the role that I wanted to be in anyway. It's like, I want to be the software architect. I want to design it. I don't want to necessarily have to do all of the grunt work to implement it, but I still am able to review it and say, yes, on this, no on that. This is how we're going to do it instead. And it iterates so much faster.
Those are all really good tips. I'm going to have to try some of that out. There's a Elixir skill, I think, that was published. We'll leave a link in the show notes that does some of what you're talking about, but this is a skill, which I don't think means that you customize it yourself. This is more of like this opinionated way of developing. But yeah, I've run into the same trouble that you've run into. And so yeah, having some good guardrails and document writing and all that kind of stuff, that's clutch.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thank you for listening. We hope you'll join us next time on Thinking Elixir.